with AgentKit, I wouldn't necessarily say that like they're going all the way for, like the Lang chains and the Lang graph style, like agent builders, the low level developer tools. It definitely feels like they're closer to targeting the RPA side, where it's like a little bit more like drag and drop interfaces, pre canned integrations. But I think what's kind of interesting about um, AgentKit, when you compare it to something like N8N or even UiPath or Zapier, is that at least as it's envisioned today, it's like really more of like a chat bot builder rather than like a process automation tool. It's like that really they don't have like kind of clear triggers in the same way that like those other tools do to be like, oh, when you get an email, then automatically trigger this workflow to do XYZ. It's more like there's some kind of chat widget that you can hook into, and then, it's going to be ultimately driven by some natural language communication with a human as like at least the first use case they're targeting. Is that going to be the end state? I don't know, but it does seem like that's been the way they've tried to avoid the direct comparison to something like a Zapier right out of the box. Um, Maybe to your broader point about like, you know, what does this mean for agents versus RPA tools? I guess one observation I'd have there is that it does feel like these products are fundamentally on a collision course where, all RPA tools will be agent builders and vice versa in the limit. And in fact, like I didn't even know this until doing a little bit of research for this recording, but N8N started in like 2019 or something like that, and
I know that.
it was actually just like basically an RPA tool that like now they've managed to shoehorn in like all this additional um, agentic stuff into it, right? So it does feel like that's where things are ultimately going. Is like all RPA tools will be agent builders, presumably. And I guess the like, what's the value of doing that? Is like, well, with traditional RPA, you can only really solve very deterministic workflows. And now with like the power of agents, you can solve more fuzzy, contextual problems of like, oh, do I route it this way or that way based on what the human is asking me to do in natural language? Like it's a bit more non-deterministic in that sense.
That's actually fascinating. I didn't even know that. And for as much as I've been seeing N8N come up in conversations, I didn't really know that it was started in 2019. Gen AI either. And I had a suspicion that if we looked at the star chart, it would sort of look something similar to this. So first of all, huge shout out to N8N. I think they're past 140,000 GitHub stars so far. And I know that to some extent it's a vanity metric, but also it's a real showcase of like brand awareness. So you can see they were, reasonably popular during what I'd call like the N8N wave, the RPA wave early, but they've just taken off in the last year, year and a half. And so I think that really underscores, your point that you're making earlier. Let me ask you the question